All right. Bonnie and I are so glad you could join us for this today. Hopefully, this will be some good information for employers who have joined us this morning and for folks who are looking for jobs as we go through this. So let me fire up our PowerPoint. Come on. Technology always gets us, doesn't it? There we go. So a little bit about NVRC. We are a small nonprofit organization whose mission is empowering deaf and hard of hearing individuals and their families through education, advocacy, and community involvement. Our primary services are information and referral, education and outreach. We also do things like hearing screenings, and we also advocate for our local deaf, hard of hearing, late deafened, and deafblind community here in Northern Virginia. You can learn more about NVRC at our website. So today we're going to cover a few things: recruiting deaf and hard of hearing employees, the interview. Once you're hired, now the job is started, how do you provide access and appropriate accommodations? We'll talk about communication strategies in the workplace that focus on inclusion and disability etiquette. And then we will have our Q&A at the end. So recruiting deaf and hard of hearing employees. Where do you get started? Now, deaf and hard of hearing, that covers a huge continuum of folks. You have folks who use sign language. You have folks that use speech and listening. You have folks that use combinations of everything, whether they grew up hearing and lost their hearing later in life, or were born with hearing loss. Hearing loss can happen at any time of life and can happen to anyone. So there are big differences in communication preferences depending on their experience of deafness or hearing loss. What type of hearing loss do they have? When did it happen? Did they grow up with it, or did it happen overnight? Both of these things can happen. There are also societal influences that can impact your communication preferences and your experience of deafness or hearing loss. How old you are, your culture, what kind of support system you have, your financial resources, the ability of other resources in your community. If you live near a city that has a large deaf population, or if you're out in the country and you're the only deaf person, your experience is going to be very different. When you're looking to recruit deaf and hard of hearing employees, here are some of the resources that you can take advantage of. CSD Works has a great online website, both for job seekers and for recruiters, folks who are looking to hire. The Gallaudet Career Center is another good one. Really, any of the universities that have programs specifically for deaf students will have some sort of career center that you can get in touch with and send out your recruiting information. So the Rochester Institute of Technology Career Center, since the National Technical Institute for the Deaf is under RIT. Also, CSUN is another great one to send out your recruiting information to. Locally, you should get in touch with your vocational rehab contacts. Here in Virginia, that is the Virginia Department for Aging and Rehabilitative Services. Those programs often have employment services, and connecting with them can help you find some really great employees. Additionally, services like ServiceSource, or organizations like ServiceSource, again, that help with placing folks into jobs. These are the places to focus your recruiting to find some really great employees. So let's talk about the interview. You found someone that you think meets your needs, and they have indicated to you that they are deaf or hard of hearing and might need some accommodations for the interview. Under the ADA, this means effective communication. That means it's your job to ensure that the person who has a hearing or speech disability can communicate with you, receive information from you, and convey information to you. And this covers vision, hearing, and speech for effective communication. The key to communicating effectively is the nature of that communication, how long it will be. Is it a complex topic? What is the context of the communication? And what is the individual requesting the accommodation? What is their normal method of communication? And that communication, of course, applies to not only the individual that you're working with, and mind you, this part is more like if you're dealing with medical services, that sort of thing, but also if the person accompanying them is deaf or hard of hearing, that needs to be provided effective communication in those circumstances. So when we're talking about working with deaf or hard of hearing individuals, it means providing auxiliary aids and services. These are services like sign language interpreters or aids like assistive listening systems. And these things are covered under the ADA as ways to provide effective communication with people who have communication disabilities. So the most important thing is asking the interview candidate what they need. Once they've indicated that they will need an accommodation, ask them what they need. Do they need an interpreter? What kind of interpreter? Do they need sign language? Do they need cued speech? Do they need tactile interpreting? Do they prefer captions? Getting captioners to provide real-time captioning for the interview. Do they need a listening system? Something that will amplify the sound as you two are talking? Or is there another kind of accommodation that they might need? That's always the first step. The other thing to consider is the logistics of the interview. Is this interview going to be on the telephone or over a video communication? If it's over the telephone, does the interviewee need an amplified phone or a captioned phone? Are they going to call you directly, or do they need to go through relay services? If you're setting it up as a video interview, do they have a webcam or video conference equipment? Do they need captioning and you need to set up what's called remote conference captioning? And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Is it a panel interview? Do you have a quiet space where everyone can meet? Is there good lighting? Does it have good line of sight? Is there a listening system available if it is needed? Are you bringing in a CART reporter or a sign language interpreter? And of course, one of the most important things is turn taking, making sure that only one person at a time is speaking. Similar considerations for a one-on-one interview. Is it a quiet space? Is there good lighting? Are there accommodations available? You have interviewed your potential hire, and you have decided they are the right person for the job. Now that they're on the job, what do you need to consider for access and accommodations? So when we're talking about accommodations, it can mean several things, as we mentioned, depending on that person's needs for communication. Providing a skilled sign language or oral interpreter or cued speech transliterator. Putting in listening systems or having a portable listening system available in meeting rooms for folks who use their residual hearing. Providing real-time captioning, especially for big meetings where you've got a lot of people involved. Following those conversations can be really difficult, and providing the real-time captioning is a real benefit for many deaf and hard of hearing folks. For folks who are also dealing with low vision, who are deaf, blind, or hard of hearing and low vision, providing Braille or large print materials and digital access to those materials so that they can use a larger font or a digital reader provides better access. So when we're talking about interpreters and transliterators, there's a couple different kinds. Obviously, sign language interpreters are the most commonly seen. We see them on stage, we see them in meetings. We have two here in our meeting as well. There are also oral transliterators for folks who are deaf and prefer to speak. They may not have learned sign language, but they need someone to sit closer to them and restate or rephrase what is being said by the person at the front of the room so that they can follow the conversation correctly. Cued speech is another form of communication. Cued speech transliterators provide a visual form of spoken language. So they use different hand shapes at different placements near the face to give clues to the speech sounds. So someone who uses cued speech to communicate would need a cued speech transliterator. Then there are tactile or close vision interpreters. For someone who is deaf, blind, or low vision, they may need an interpreter who sits directly in front of them or beside them, who signs into their hands, or sits very close so that they can follow the ASL in their limited field of vision. It's important to remember that ASL, sign language, is not universal. There are as many sign languages as there are spoken languages. Here in the US, we use American Sign Language. And American Sign Language itself, much like much of the country, is a mishmash of other languages. When the first schools for the deaf were established, they brought in a teacher, a French teacher. So you have French Sign Language, you have the home signs that the deaf kids were using at home. You had communities like Martha's Vineyard that had its own sign language. And when those students were brought to the deaf schools, it got incorporated. And then American Indian Sign Language was also incorporated. So much like America, our sign language is a mishmash, as grown from many different backgrounds. Excuse me. We also have pigeon signed English. This is often a form of communication where folks use American Sign Language, but in English word order. American Sign Language has its own sentence structure and syntax, which is actually different from spoken English. So pigeon sign becomes that kind of in between. And sign language is always changing. It is always evolving. There are regional signs. As we mentioned, each foreign country has its own sign language. Even different deaf schools develop their own signs. As new technologies develop, folks are coming up with new signs all the time. When you are arranging for sign language interpreters, you want to ask the person about what their needs and preferences are. Do they have any interpreters that they worked with before that they like? Use certified interpreters whenever possible. When you're arranging these meetings, make sure you give as much information as possible to the interpreter in advance. That way they can review vocabulary, make sure that they understand what the content of your meeting is going to be. If you need help finding interpreters, we are a local resource, but there is also the Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf has a searchable database. The Virginia Department for Deaf and Hard of Hearing also has a searchable database that you can take advantage of. And Vital Signs has a great website on learning how to work with an interpreter. And of course, anytime you have questions, ask the interpreter, ask the deaf person. They already have that experience. Very important to remember to talk to the person, not to the interpreter. So you want to avoid a tell him, tell her. Oh, tell them this for me. You are talking to them. The interpreter is just there to make your words visible and to voice their words to you. But you and the person are actually having the conversation. Whoops, hold on. I got to go back. Sorry about that. All right. We do have a video here real quick, and this is one of the ones that does not have voice. One of our board members, Jeremy Smith, talked with us a little bit about the challenges and solutions that he has had in the workplace. Okay. Excuse me. So let's now talk about real-time captioning. Communication access, real-time translation. This can be provided, projected up onto a wall. It can be put up on a big screen TV, or it can even be provided on a person's laptop. You bring in a specialized CART reporter who has training in providing real-time captioning. It offers a word-for-word transcript of what is being said. Again, when you're bringing in a real-time captioner, you want to provide as much information as you can before the meeting starts. That way, the CART writer has a chance to enter the information into their system and make sure that they have the right vocabulary for your meeting. This can also be helpful for the meeting in general because it provides a written record. If everyone agrees, you can then take that transcript and keep it as your meeting notes. CART can also be provided remotely, where you don't necessarily have the captioner in the room, but they are sending their captions to a secure website that your meeting can then sign into to follow the captions, much like we are doing today with our stream text link. You want to look for CART writers and captioners who are certified. The National Court Reporters Association can help you find those. You want to look for either a CCP or a CRR certification for your captioner. We have another board member who joined us to give their experiences of challenges and solutions in the workplace. This is Eric Nordloff.
Hi, my name is Eric Nordloff, and I am deaf with a cochlear implant in my right ear to hear. I work for IBM as a public sector consultant, and I work in the field of data analytics. The easiest way for me to communicate one-on-one is to meet with the person in a quiet environment so I can hear best. It also helps to have print materials available so we can both review the work that needs to be done. The most challenging workplace situation for me are group meetings, especially when they are last minute because I do not have time to set up accommodations. Remote captioning is the technology that helps me the most. At work, most of my meetings are planned ahead of time, so I am able to set up a conference call. This allows a remote captioner to call in and follow the meeting. I can access the transcript online with my work laptop and follow along. One of the biggest challenges for me in workplace is missing out on background conversations. This means I can miss out on valuable information, and it sometimes makes me feel excluded. One time, I did not know that a coworker was leaving the team until their last day when they said goodbye, and the rest of my team had already known this for a week. Because of this, I have to figure out other ways to stay involved and included.
So other technologies that we discussed earlier, personal amplifiers or listening systems. These are that can either be installed or can be portable. What we're showing here are Pocket Talker, which is a personal amplifier. It is a hardwired device that lets you turn up the volume on the folks that you're chatting with. So for one-on-one meetings or those small group meetings, this can be helpful for someone who is hard of hearing. For larger meetings, you may need to use something like an FM system. This is a wireless system where the speaker has the transmitter and the hard of hearing person has the receiver, and again, can adjust the volume as they need to. If the hard of hearing person has hearing aids or a cochlear implant that have what's called a telecoil built into them, they could also use a neck loop with those. A former board member, Lynette Moore, will talk about her experiences in the workplace.
Hi, my name is Lynette Moore, and I am hard of hearing. I work for the post office. The best method for communication 101. Dealing with our job to work at the post office, people don't understand that we need a one-on-one communication. Give you a example. Working in the working field of a noisy environment, it caused it hard to communicate with someone who have a disability. Not only just a disability, we need to have a better sources of communication. My experience working there is a struggle and frustrated. When you have a staff and a supervisor trying to pull your attention by calling out your name in a noisy environment, yes, it's very frustrating for me. Give you an example. I could be working in the job fair, doing my job, and they shouting out my name. Sorry, I cannot hear you. So they have to come and tap me on my shoulder. So when I turned around, they were like, "Did you hear me calling you?" I was like, "No, I cannot hear you. It's too noisy." What I find helpful in the workplace: my hearing aid, the streamer, and the phone. This helped me to communicate with my supervisor by using the streamer to block the background sound. It was very helpful for me not being frustrated. So, when I'm working during my workplace and leaving outside of the field, when my supervisor needs to contact me through the phone, I will use the streamer to block the sound to communicate with my supervisor through the phone. Oh wow, it really helped me out a lot, and I really enjoyed working with the post office. It released the stress from the background sound and the best communication with the supervisor.
So Lenore brought up using the telephone to communicate with her supervisor. And there's different ways that this can happen. For folks who use American Sign Language, they could use a video relay service where they use their webcam and internet service to call the relay service, and an interpreter then connects them to the hearing person that they want to speak with. And so this facilitates the communication back and forth. The more traditional relay service is still out there as well for folks who use what's called a TTY, and they type their message to the operator, who then voices to the hearing person. And then what the hearing person says, the operator types back. This is the TTY that I mentioned. Many folks have seen, let me rephrase that. We are seeing less and less people using the TTY, particularly deaf and hard of hearing folks. It is still used by folks who have speech disabilities and by some folks who are deaf blind. So it is still a useful communication tool, but for many deaf and hard of hearing folks who use sign language, they are switching to the relay service. So the TTY may at some point fade away. Folks who are hard of hearing or late deafened, or those who prefer to use their voice to speak over the phone, may use amplified phones or caption telephones. The caption telephone gives them a printout on the screen of what the other person is saying. They may also take advantage of signaling devices in their environment, whether at home or in the office. They may need amplified sound to let them know that the phone is ringing. Or they may need a visual flasher for the fire alarm, for a doorbell, the ring of the phone. Some folks will even use a vibration, a vibrating pager to let them know that their phone is ringing. As we say now, there's an app for that. Many of these access technologies can also be used on your smartphones or tablets. Being able to make caption telephone calls on your smartphone. There are apps for that. The same with the video relay service apps as well on your smartphone, on your tablet, so that you can have that access to communication wherever you go. For one-on-one meetings or even very brief small group meetings, you may want to try using a speech-to-text app. Remember that speech-to-text is never going to be as accurate as a real-time captioner. So if you have a really important meeting, really important information that you need to share, you need to make sure to set up those accommodations for the best accuracy. This kind of technology is exchanging information with your coworker, you know, that kind of thing. And these are some of the apps that can be really helpful. NVRC does have a device demonstration room, and we are happy to have folks come in and try things out and see what kind of technologies are available. We ask that you make an appointment, and we would be happy to set that up with you. Because we are still dealing with COVID, we do ask that you make an appointment, but during our demonstration hours, all visitors must wear masks, and we do have gloves available for handling the equipment and hand sanitizer, and all of the equipment is cleaned after folks try it out. Now I'm going to turn this over to Bonnie O'Leary, and she's going to talk about communication strategies and inclusion and disability etiquette.
And then you slide, there we go. Okay, so we're going to finish up our program today by talking about communication strategies, and part of the information that is very important for people, especially people who are in the employment field, is that there are myths about deafness and hearing loss. There are many, but among the most popular are the fact that deaf and hard of hearing people can lip read. Well, right now that's very difficult with masks, but eventually we won't be wearing masks anymore. That hearing aids and cochlear implants are like glasses for the ears, which is actually not true. When you have a hearing aid or a cochlear implant, it doesn't provide the same result for our hearing that glasses can provide for our vision. So if we have garden variety vision issues like nearsightedness or farsightedness, you can get glasses and you have 20/20 or better. But it's very different with hearing aids and cochlear implants. Also, people assume that if you use amplification, that will benefit people who are hard of hearing. Sometimes it will. For folks who are hard of hearing, often what they hear is distorted speech. So if they're in an auditorium or that type of environment and they use a PA system, that distorted speech becomes hundreds of times louder. On the other hand, if they can pick up a receiver and a headset or a neck loop, then when the person speaks through the microphone, they'll get a direct feed to their ear. So that will work. Also, that low background noise will not bother someone who is deaf. We have had folks get in touch with us at NVRC over the years to tell us they have a job, got a new job, but they put my office right by the outside air conditioning unit or right by the printing room where the copy machine is, and they can get all that vibration. So they have to request being moved to a quieter office. And then I come up against this a lot. I'm very hard of hearing. If I take out my hearing aids, I am definitely deaf at this point in time. But because I am a hearing person, and yes, I've taken sign language classes over time, but an interpreter isn't going to help me. I need to read what people are saying. And the number of times I've mentioned to them, well, I have a hearing loss. Oh, we'll get you an interpreter. That's the automatic assumption that everybody will need an interpreter. And it's also important to know that communication situations are complex, because in any communication event that you have the person speaking, the person listening, the environment we're in, and the message that's being delivered. So if you change any one of these four elements just a little bit, the outcome can be completely different for the person who has the hearing loss. Now, lip reading or speech reading, lip reading is just reading lips. Speech reading is, as we know, reading the body, the eyes, the facial expressions, body language, that's all there. Only 30% of English is actually discernible on the lips because we speak very far back in our throat. So that means that 70% is not. And words can look and sound the same, like coat and goat, baby, maybe, time and dime, and so on. So there are many layers of complication when we try to speech read. With one-on-one communication, even with a mask, you want to face the person. You need to speak slowly and clearly, not so slowly that you exaggerate your words, but just at a nice, comfortable pace. If conditions allow, you can remove your mask temporarily. I've been in a couple of situations recently where I've been able to do that. I've had both of my shots, and the person I was with had both of their shots also. So we stepped back from each other and took the mask down, and that worked very well for me. Rephrasing is a wonderful strategy. Instead of repeating the same thing over again that the person didn't understand, try saying it a different way. Pausing now and then if you have a lot of information to give, and finish what you have to say while you're facing the person. Don't be looking down or walking away or turning. So who's easiest to lip read here in the office? How often do we have people who speak without looking up from their monitors or covering their face? And of course now, on top of everything else, we have to deal with the masks. These are deaf-friendly masks. These are a couple of companies that make them. This is one, I have one here, like this. And then you can find homemade masks on Amazon, Etsy, and those kinds of websites. One-on-one communication, you can also use technology, as Debbie was talking about before. The speech-to-text apps are very popular. And this is something called an Ubi Duo device. And that way you can type back and forth to the person. For group meetings and events at work, it's important for the individual to know the meeting, event time and place. Where is it going to take place? Make sure that they select where they would like to sit, and make sure that they have a clear line of sight to the person who's going to be presenting. If you're showing videos, please make sure that they are captioned, and you can provide written instructions, written agendas, anything that they can have to read. And then you may have a CART reporter, maybe an interpreter, or perhaps a personal amplifier for the person who needs it. How about these communication environments? Let's take a look at these for a second. These are common office setups. Why might these be difficult for a person who has a hearing loss? Look at this one up here. Look at all these windows. Now that's great. That's a wonderful, very bright and sunny place. But if you're sitting in front of the window, and we're going to see this in a minute, the light is shining in behind you. So if the person who is deaf or hard of hearing is across from you, they're going to see all that light and it casts shadow on the face. For hard of hearing people, in a place like this, you're going to have a lot of echo. And with everybody working and talking at the same time, there's going to be continuous background noise. So that's not too friendly an environment. And this one, very similar, but at least we've got a little bit of carpeting here. You've got some chairs that can perhaps absorb some sound. This is a little bit more of a private area, but look, you still have these high ceilings. And I'm looking here and I'm seeing vents. And if it's a green building, those vents are going to be blowing out air nonstop. So this might be a better arrangement in an office environment. But how would we let this person know that we're coming into their office? If they're facing this way and their back is to the entrance here, a flashlight might work, flashing to let them know you're there, perhaps putting a mirror here so they can see you coming in, or perhaps a little buzzer that you could put here and it would flash a light by the person's desk when you push it. There's a general rule of thumb that if you cannot change the environment you're in, you need to change environments. So if it's very noisy, try to find a quieter setting. There's a big mask on this person. I can't put mask on everybody here. But when there's too much going on, we need to move into a quieter space. Like Eric Nordloff mentioned at work, he appreciated being in a quieter environment. We need to get their attention before you start talking, because as we talked about the message, if you're in on it from the beginning, the chances are you will get a lot more out of it. Somebody might not like to be tapped on the shoulder. They don't, I don't want to be touched. You need to ask the person, what's the best way for me to get your attention? You might want somebody to wave at you, tap you on the shoulder, flash a light, find out what their preference is. This is the bright light I was just talking about. If you stand in front of a bright light, you can't really see the person's face very well. So you want to see the whole face, even with the mask. You can read the facial expressions and the body language a lot better. And of course, writing notes is another technique that helps very well. It's important to remember social inclusion. Think about what Eric just said, that he didn't even know that one of his team members was leaving. So you think about how much information we get by just overhearing it. So you want to make a conscientious effort to share the information about office news. An office bulletin board is a very good way to do that. A physical one, if you're at the office now, or if you're still meeting virtually, there's a way to create a virtual bulletin board. And this helps everybody know if there's a birthday party, if there's a job change, if there's a life change, everybody can be included in the information. And then if you start doing after hours get-togethers, don't forget accessibility for those either. And you don't want to say, oh, never mind, or I'll tell you later, or it's not that important. These are things that are very hurtful to people who cannot hear. If it's important enough for everybody else to know, it should be important enough for them to know. What I will add here is if you tell somebody, look, I'll tell you later, sometimes you have to do that, then tell them later. Go to them and say, you know, we were talking about this earlier now. I want to fill you in now that we have a nice quiet place to do that. And this is Anne DeLiebe, who is now the accountant for CSD. And she was formerly our finance manager. Okay, and so that brings us to the end of our presentation today. If you would like to have a copy of the PowerPoint, feel free to email either Debbie or myself. The email addresses are right here, and I'm going to turn it back over to Debbie for our question and answer period. Stop sharing. Okay. Debbie, where is Debbie here? There she is. Okay.
So we'd like to thank you all for being here today. We really appreciate your time, and we hope this was helpful for you. All right. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.
Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you, interpreters and CART. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, guys.